Yeah, you're very welcome to another edition of the West Cork League podcast. I'm your host, Ger McCarthy. You can follow me on Twitter at Ger McCarthy74. And we're back to talk all things West Cork League. A hectic week, even though it hasn't been as busy as other weekends. And I look ahead to an even busier weekend in both the O'Brien Water Services Championship and of course the Premier High-Spec Cars.com Premier Division, and as well as that a couple of big Munster Junior Cup game and an FAI Junior Cup game to talk about as well. Before we start, we got a big reaction unsurprisingly to last week's pod with Clonakilty manager John Leahy. Just one clarification to make from that podcast. It was stated during the podcast that Doris and Bantry Bay Rovers are an amalgamation. The Doris team that now plays in the Premier Division. That is not the case. It is and always has been Doris FC. There are a couple of Bantry Bay Rovers players, former Bantry Bay Rovers players involved, but it's very, very much Tygo Sullivan's team, Doris, that came up from the O'Brien Water Services Championship and are doing very well for themselves in the Premier Division this year. So that's one clarification from that. PRO and usual suspect and podcast dweller Mike Helen is still off on his cruise, and while he's away we have an extra special guest, a hard act to follow from last week, but I'm delighted to say that we've got Dunmanway Town Manager and West Cork League Secretary John Buckley with us. How are you, John?
Hi, Ger. How are you?
You listened to last week's podcast, and what did you think of it?
I did. Enjoyable, and anybody that I spoke to that listened in, and I think it had great listeners as well listening in. They all enjoyed it. Very entertaining, and let's hopefully everyone will enjoy this one as well.
Very true. Let's get straight into it, and we're going to start with two games from last weekend's the West Cork League Under-19 League, which got up and running last weekend. On the Saturday, the first game and the inaugural game of the new season was Dunmanway Town beating Riverside Athletic 3-0. Before we talk about that, John, the thinking behind an Under-19 league this year and why you went Under-19.
Yeah, it's been mooted with about 4 or 5 years. It came up at every AGM maybe in the last couple of years, and it's been looked at and there's been objections, and that's why it's been knocked down in the last couple of years. I was for it. Some years in the past, I was against it. I was back for it. It's the kind of a thing that the West Cork League and clubs decided that they'd try. It's a trial season in this under-19s and see how it works. There's still a big gap there between under-16 and under-19s now that since we've moved on to under-19s. But it's a gap that we'll hopefully bridge by bringing an under-17 league in also. So hopefully it'll work. It's something definitely worth trying, and that's what we're doing this season in the West Cork League. The game that started it off in West Cork, the first game was Dunmanway Town versus Riverside. Cracking game. I was at part of the second half of it, and saw a good goal from Aaron O'Donovan, who scored a cracking goal. Robbie Long and Darragh Collins finished it off, a 3-0 win. Riverside, I was surprised at this result because Dunmanway, they have a good team. There, some of the players actually on that team, like Alan Crowley and Stephen Daly, are on my junior team, first Dunmanway Town A team as well, and they're well able for it. There's some class players in there, even besides those two players. But Riverside also, they have some very good players. Aaron O'Driscoll and Michael Collins, Joe Collins, some of our ex-players. They have very good players throughout, and they will do well during the whole season. Like, they won 2 years ago, they won the Under-18 League, and it's more or less most of the same players. I would be thinking, well, they'd have some of the same players anyway. So there is quality there, and we'll be a good team. I think they've tour next week, so it'll all be down in Torrigan now next week.
Very good. Yes, a very good start for Dunmanway there, as you said. In one other game played in the 19 League this past weekend on the Sunday, Artfield, who should be quite strong, they got off to a very good start against Castleack. Yeah,
Artfield are always they have very good underage, always coming through. Very good players, always filtering through. Like some of the best players have probably been taken off and gone to Cork and things like that. But that's part and parcel for every club in West Cork. That can't be helped, unfortunately, and no club will try and stop some of their better players bettering themselves. Killeen Keenan, Michael Minsa, I think, scored the goals for Ardfield. A great start for Ardfield. Castleack, maybe they just got caught a bit cold. It was an away game as well for them. But I presume Castleack will get going yet in this season as well.
Yeah, we're going to keep an eye on that under-19 league quite a bit on the podcast over the coming season. Plenty of games and a lot of emerging talent, a lot of players that will take the step up to junior eventually. But a good start, 2 good wins, home wins for both Dunmanway and Artfield there. On Sunday, there was one game in the Premier HighSpecCars.com Premier Division, but a very important one because John Buckley, Toher Celtic hosted Doris and got their first win in 5 attempts.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Tor maybe we're struggling in a few games, all right. Like, they have 5 games played. That was their first win. 3 draws, one loss. But they're still a very hard team, There's Tor, like, they won't roll over. They're the kind of teams like that that will not lose a game at all costs. Same with Doris. I know maybe they've been missing a few players and they're not back to full strength yet. And I think some of their Bantry players, I think, they had a game the night before. Maybe they didn't have all those players available to them. So maybe Doris weren't in full strength. But I think from what I hear, Doris get Tor a good run for their money at the same time. The evergreen David Maw, got 2 goals for Tor and Gareth Crowley. And the replies were from Jason O'Sullivan and Shane McSweeney. Shane McSweeney, good players from what I hear. And Doris, I think they can only go from strength to strength from here. They're by no means, this is a very, very tight Premier Division this year. I know Doris has 6 games played, they have 7 points, but at the same time, teams are going to take points off each other this season. I don't subscribe to what Mr. Leahy said last week, and that maybe Drina and will go unbeaten this season. And I hope my own team, Dunmanway, will take points off them. But I think there's other teams in there as well. Ballyhop still have to go to Drina and Clantown. I'm not sure if it's home or away now, but we have to travel to them as well. We already beat them this season in the Parkway Cup, I think it was. So look, they're there to be beaten. They're not unbeatable, like what they were in the past. We're definitely up for it, and I bet other clubs in the Premier Division are also up for it as well.
Yeah, we were talking about that in previous podcasts, and you make a good point. The fact that there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 clubs, there's no margin for error, John. No, you've only done Dunmanway Town. We've only played a handful of games, and we'll talk about your cup run there in a second and your cup games. But when you look at that table at the moment, Drina are on top, 3 points clear of Ballyhob and Clantown. But Doris, full strength, Tor getting on a run, and Lyre Rovers, who I had the pleasure of watching against Ballyhob quite recently, are a fantastic team as well. And Bunratty, as young as they are, they'll be much stronger now that Bantry and Gabriel Rangers maybe are no longer involved in the GA. There really is no margin for error.
No, I think this is the teams affected by GA. That's nearly over with those Premier teams. Now the serious time hits the West Cork League, and everybody should be back full strength. There's Drina, they've only a 3-point lead of Ballyhob. Ballyhob are a serious team. If I was to pick it, I think Ballyhob would actually be my pick for the title this year. Obviously, I'll be hoping Dunmanway Town.
I was going to ask. And what about Clantown? Because I know I'd be asked as well.
Clantown, we played them the first game of the season. We probably weren't up to scratch, but that's taking nothing from Clonakilty Town at the same time. They were solid at the back. They broke and they caught us twice, in 2 quick goals, but we weren't at the races, I don't think. We are probably more up to speed now after the few cup games and everything like that. And the 2 league games, we got a win against Doris, and that was a hard fought game also. Could have gone either way. But I think these cup games now that we have played, and we have another cup game next Sunday, and we have another Munster Champions Cup game. We've been knocked out of the Munster.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that actually. I mean, you travelled to Passage, you lost 2-1, and Mark Buckley got your goal. But how did you play? What kind of game was it?
Tough game. The pitch was a bit soft. That was not their fault. In fairness, there was heavy showers during the game. We never really settled. Look, there was a couple of different things kind of coming into the game that didn't suit us as well. We lost our keeper, would you believe, in the under-19 game the day before, in the warm-up, in an extended warm-up. That the game was delayed from kick-off because of an underage match before us and different things. He actually got injured. He done ligaments in his ankle, so we're now without a keeper for maybe 6 weeks. Our left back, Ray Jennings, outstanding player this season. I think in most of our games this year, I think bar 1-2, I think. He got player. We pick a kind of man of the match, and he got most of the man of the matches so far this season, and he was missing because of an injury that he had, that he picked up in Roscrea the Sunday before it. He was in Bantry Hospital on Saturday morning because his leg wasn't getting any better. He's a bruised shin. You should see the state of his leg. There was no way he could play, even though he wanted, but I wouldn't let him play. And we were with our central midfielder as well, Fionn Hurley. And so look, there were three big players, three starting players that we were without against Passage. But take nothing from that at the same time. Passage, they're a good, strong side, very hard team to break down. Very big, very physical team. As I said, pitch was a bit soft. We had heavy showers during the game as well. We never really got going. We never played like the way we played against both in Roscrea and against Clodove and against Doris in the weeks coming up to it. We were beginning to hit our form. This game now, unfortunately, I was hoping that we would get a win out of it and keep things going. It's very hard to beat a farm team that's used to winning, and we've a big game coming up now again next week against Everton, who are just after coming away from a 4-0 defeat against Killarney in, I think it was the Munster Junior Cup first round, I think it was. Or was the Munster Champions Cup now, I'm not really sure. And would you believe they had a player sent off in the first half, and they still, even though it was a 4-0 result, it was a 4-0 in extra time. And they held them 0-0 after 90 minutes, and unfortunately in extra time they lost out to Killarney Celtic. So that'll tell you the quality of what we're up against next week. So all big games to come for Dunmanway and before we hit the league form.
And just before we leave the Munster Junior Cup, one other result involving a West Cork League club last weekend. Castleac went down 4-2 to Wilton, but only after extra time, which sounds like they put in yet another good performance.
Yeah, Chris O'Donnell, the player manager, he got the 2 goals for Castleac, and just unfortunately maybe the legs ran out for Castleac. It was a home game for Castleac. Unfortunately to see that's Castleac and Dunmanway Town. We're out of the Munster Junior Cup. I think Drina are flying the flag for West Cork next season or next week. So which would be good if they could get a good run going. Very
good. So we'll that's the cup roundup done, and the under-19 and the Premier Iceberg cards. And we'll now take a quick check on the O'Brien Water Services Championship. And as you probably heard from previous podcasts, John, a very, very exciting league. There doesn't seem to be any one team surging ahead. There's a handful of at least 6 or 7 or 8 clubs there jostling for those top 6 positions. And I suppose the first result that stands out, or that came out from the weekend, was that Castletown Celtic held league leaders Riverside Athletic to a 2-2 draw in Castletown, Kenna.
Yeah, I suppose this was the local derby of the weekend. Castletown, playing host to their neighbours Riverside, who also play in Castletown's pitch. Jack O'Callaghan again getting on the scoring, and Owen O'Mahony. Riverside, Aaron O'Driscoll. I think everyone has an eye out for him now at this stage. He's chipping in goals nearly every week as well. But Castletown, they've probably been affected by GA as well in different ways. And I know they're sitting bottom of the table after 7 games and 3 draws, and 4 losses. But at the same time, they're well able. They'll push on yet. They'll hit a rich run of form, especially coming up to the Beamish Cup. They're going to be pushing for every win. And maybe it's a ploy. Maybe they want to come along and finish in the bottom half. I know a couple of clubs are watching as well, and to maybe finish in the second division and put in a good run in that one, and maybe hopefully get silverware there. But at the same time, up there at the top, like Riverside, I know they're up at the top at the moment, but it's ding dong every single week between themselves and Spartak and Solane now chipping in there and moving into second place.
Yeah, we
wouldn't count out Kilbrittain either yet.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about Spartak Moscow and Kilbrittain over the last few weeks, but one club that has slowly inched their way up the table that you just mentioned there are Solane, and they went to the Baltimore Road and they got a good win over an always difficult to beat Skibbereen that puts them only 2 points behind Riverside. Yeah,
Skibbereen, Brian Hodnett scored for Skibbereen, but this Jack Healy guy again, I actually was at the Dunmanway Town B versus Solane game a few weeks back, and it was a 5-5 game, cracking game. Even though Solane were shown to be a bit defensively weak, maybe early in the first half they were cut out a few times by Dunmanway, but the man with Town B didn't have the legs for them, and Salan came running back at him. But Chris Desmond also scored against Skibbereen yesterday, and they're definitely a young team, very young team. But my memories of Salan as well, in the underage, they've always had good numbers coming through. So there is quality there, and very young team, as I said. They should do well. They should do well this season. Whether they can challenge Spartak, Riverside, Kilbrittain, maybe Mizzen as well. Like I think Mousy picked Mizzen as well as a team to come good. I know they've 2 games in hand, and the likes of Riverside and Salan, there might be 8 points behind, but if they win those games in hand, they'll be up there as well towards the end.
Yeah, another club to keep a watch on is Mizzen AFC, and always good to watch play a good brand of football. And another club, I know you'll be delighted to see any new club that forms in the West Cork League. It's always a good news story. But to see Kilbrittain Rovers forming and doing quite well this season, a 2-0 win over Dunmanway Town B last weekend, pushing them up to 4th.
Yeah, Ger McCarthy and Dennis Danikill scored for Kilbrittain. Dunmanway probably were travelling a bit weaker than normal. They're probably better at home than what they are away. I think from what I've seen of them, they're better. They're not very good travellers, Dunmanway Town B. But no, Kilbrittain not taking that from them. In fairness, they inched out a good 2-0 win. They'll be there and thereabouts. They're only in their second season. They had a great first season as far as what I could see. I haven't seen them play now much, but from what I heard, they're a good side. They're a goal scoring side. They'll always chip in a few goals. So good to see from a new club. Definitely, I'd love to see more clubs like Kilbrittain coming in. Yes,
indeed, and it's good to see them doing well, as you said, and in the promotion race already this year. One final result to talk about, and that's Drina Rangers B edging Ulta Celtic.
Yeah, Drina, they're probably people expected a lot more out of Drina. They've 7 games played, 2 wins, 2 draws, 3 losses. They've only 11 goals scored, which is surprising out of Drina B. They've 12 conceded, something that I didn't really see out of Drina B. They have goal scorers there, our fixture secretary Eamon Connolly plays for them, and he's well able to score goals. Was well able at when he was playing with Drina A also. But Ulta probably, they're not hitting the rich vein of form which I thought they would. I thought they were stronger this year than what they were in the last couple of years. They gained a few extra players from different clubs around the place. They're only after having 1 win, 1 draw and 4 losses, which is surprising. And not scoring the goals. They've only 9 goals scored in 6 games. I'd like to see them pushing on a bit as well. They are better than what what the results are showing there at the moment. They're only losing games by a very fine margin, and that game looked like a tight game as well.
Yeah, as ever, plenty of entertainment, plenty of goals in the O'Brien Water Services Championship Division, which looks like the following. Riverside Athletic are top of the table with 16 points from their 7 games. We also have Salan in second place with just 2 points behind. Then Spartak Mosgrove in third, but they have a game in hand on the 2 leaders, as do Kilbrittain Rovers in fourth on 12. Then you have a clutch of clubs with a point apart in the middle of the table: Mizzen, Drina B, Dunmanway B, Baltimore and Skib. And at the bottom of the table, Ulta Celtic that we just spoke about, Castleac and Castletown looking to kick on in the second half of the campaign. Right, look
to watch there probably I would think are Mizzen, though, with only 5 games played.
Yeah.
Maybe Baltimore, they've only 5 games played also, and they're only 1 point behind Mizzen as well. So there's a lot to play for there yet.
There is indeed, and it looks like being a really exciting league. And I think the good thing and the good decision that you made, you must be very happy with that decision now, that at the end of once everybody's played once, that you split it up into 2 divisions. It gives the teams in the bottom half plenty to play for.
Yeah, definitely. It was the thing that was moved around in the last 2-3 years. David Hall, I think, brought it in first of all when he was fixture secretary, and I think that was a good decision. And Eamon brought it in last year and again this year. And I think it's all the clubs. It's keeping them interested. What we've seen over the years in the past, and I'm around over 20 years, and watching these divisions, and I've seen walkovers, and it's soul destroying for clubs. There's clubs just out there, they just want to play games, even if they're not in the running at the top of the table, chasing for promotion or anything like that. And there's clubs out there every Sunday just want to play games, and there's nothing worse than coming along and being told on the day that the games are called off, because there's nothing really in it for the other team to come along and turn up. So this way it keeps everybody interested. I think there's teams looking down near the bottom there, Castleac, Ulster, not taken from Castletown. I think, as I said earlier, Castletown, when they get everybody together and coming up to the Beamish Cup, they're going to be pushing on there for wins as well. Skibbereen have a young team. Baltimore, definitely, I think they could finish yet in the top half as well and push on. You know, the Manwatown, young team, very young team. We're playing a lot of the under-19s in that team as well. So look, every one of those teams, I think, are going to be challenging. You know, even when the split comes, it's going to be still make it very, very interesting, and everybody wants to turn up on a Sunday, which is what it's all about: getting games played and getting players out there every Sunday playing.
That's exactly it. And let's now take a quick check on all the fixtures coming up on Saturday, the 19th of October in the Under-19s West Cork League. Castleac will host Bunratty United at 11 o'clock. Artfield welcome Manwaytown to the showgrounds at 2. Drina Rangers and Bantry Bay Rovers meet at 2 o'clock in Cannon Crawley Park. And Toher Celtic take on Riverside Athletic also at 2 o'clock. And I guess it's that last game there has the potential to be a real cracker, John.
Definitely, yeah. Toher Celtic, after winning the Under-18s last season, against the Riverside side that won the Under-18s the season before. A lot of those players are still playing on those teams. So I think that's going to be the tight game of the week. Game definitely to watch. I think maybe Riverside, I think they're still my tip, even though they were beaten in their first game against Dunmanway. Tor, probably, it's hard to knock them out of it at the same time. You know, after such a good season last season was a very, very tight under-18 season, and they didn't run away with anything, as Riverside didn't either the year before. So I think that's going to be a very interesting league this year.
Yeah, just a very exciting one, and plenty of talent, as we said, up and coming towards, hopefully it end up in the junior side of things, representing their clubs at under-19 in what should be a very competitive under-19 West Cork League. Let's take a check as well now on the O'Brien Water Services Championship fixtures for the coming weekend. On Sunday, the 20th of October, Baltimore take on Celan at 11 o'clock. Castleac meet Castletown Celtic at 11 o'clock as well. At noon, Kilbrittain Rovers welcome Drina Rangers B. And at 1:30, Riverside Athletic meet Dunmanwaytown B at Castletown Kenna. Mizzen AFC take on Skibbereen at 2:30, and Spartak Musgrove also take on Ulta Celtic at 2:30. Now, there's a couple of good games there, John, but the one I'm looking at the moment at the top of the table, and you spoke about them a while ago, Celan travelling to the Baltimore Road to take on the Crabs, Baltimore AFC. That has all the hallmarks of what could be a very, very good game.
Definitely. Baltimore haven't got a lot of games played, as we said earlier, in the league table. They're a good side, especially at home as well. Celan, as I say, I saw them earlier in the season. They played the Manwaytown B. A bit young. They were caught a bit cold earlier in the game. But they are very good going forward. They are able to score the goals that'll win them those games. It'll all depend on Baltimore, how they are in the day. Dan McKeown, I think, has been chipping a few goals there in the last few weeks, not taking from everybody else. But I think that's the tight game. And definitely, I agree with you there, Gert. That will be the tight game. Kilbrittain against Drina. It's hard to predict. Because Kilbrittain are at home, I'd probably predict Kilbrittain. Castleac and Castletown. That's going to be a tight one as well. But I fancy Castletown to win that one there. They are away from home. But Castletown will, they showed it last week with a 2-2 draw against Riverside. Riverside then playing at home against the Manwaytown B. The Manwaytown B are really up first. They really want to give it a good go this year. And they're trying hard with a very young team, as we said in previous podcasts. Young goalkeeper, very young under. A lot of the players are playing under 19s as well. But fierce interest in the Manway this year. I think they will travel with good spirits, and hopefully, I think they'll try hard there. It will upset the apple cart a little bit if they get a result against Riverside. Mizzen and Skibbereen, local derby there. Skibbereen travelling down to Mizzen, but I think that's a hard task for any team to travel down to Mizzen, so I predict Mizzen there. Spartak versus Ulta. Hard to see any other results, especially with Spartak being at home. I would predict Spartak to win that game also.
Yeah, plenty of action and results that will have a big effect on the top half of that table, which we'll talk about in next week's podcast. Before we jump into the Premier HighSpecCars.com Premier Division, there's two very, very important games as well next weekend. In the Munster Junior Cup, the opening round, Kilreen Celtic will take on West Cork League's Drina Rangers, and in the FAI Junior Cup third round, Dunmanwaytown are hosting Everton. obviously you want to win that game, John. It's not going to be, as we spoke about Everton earlier on. But let's just talk about Drina for a second, because that's a very tough away draw in the Munster Junior Cup for them.
Yeah, Kilreen are, but Drina are one of the top teams in West Cork, and I predict them to go up to Cork and easily get a win. I think above there. We've nothing to fear when West Cork teams, the top West Cork Premier teams especially, that are on form, especially teams like Drina who are very much on form. They're well able to play up against another junior team above in Cork and have the beating of them, even though it's away. I'd easily predict Drina to win that game.
Sounding a bit like Mousy there now, John. Very impressive. We'll hold you to that next week if that comes true. Hopefully they will. Just being away from home, I suppose if they were at home, I'd fancy them a bit more, but no reason, as you said, why the top teams like yourselves and Drina can't do it in these cup competitions. Now, also next Sunday, there's 3 very, very important games in the Premier Highspec Cars.com Premier Division. At 11 o'clock next Sunday, Bunratty United go in search of their first win at home to Doris. At noon, Toher Celtic take on Loyer Rovers. And at 12:30, two sides occupying 2 of the top 3 positions. Clonakilty Town FC welcome Ballydehob to Dara. Let's talk about that Bunratty and Doris game first, because a young team, hopefully going to strengthen over the next couple of weeks. Bunratty, one win could start a positive run for them. They haven't been that far behind in each of the games that they've lost, but Doris will definitely want to get a win and stay up there with the top 3 as well. Yeah,
definitely. Doris, they've been unlucky against Tor. They were unlucky against Domanway when they lost against ourselves. Bunratty, I know the results aren't going their way. They have a young team that are well able to play soccer. But I'd still, if I was a betting person, which I'm not, I'd put my money on Doris here. But saying that, an outside bet maybe on a draw. You'd never know.
Very good. Sit in the fence there, good man yourself. Toher and Loyer are separated by 2 points in the table. I've seen both teams are both very, very good, very talented, and very good off the ball at pressing in and turning over possession. But a win for either here moves them into the top half of the table. But I would imagine with home advantage and having finally got that broken their duck last week, would you fancy Toher in this one?
Depending on Loyer, I think Loyer should be full strength now again. They should be near enough full strength. It's a hard one to pick. Tor being at home, I suppose they should have enough for Loyer, but Loyer never give it easy. Like a couple of weeks ago in midweek game against Ballydehob, I think they give Ballydehob an awful rattle, and I think they'll give Tor a rattle here as well. I think that's a scoring draw game. I think.
Playing it very safe. And finally, that big game at the top of the table, Clonakilty Town and Ballydehob, 2 teams going really well, both on 10 points. Ballydehob have a game in hand, but a win for either here moves them joint top of the table, so plenty incentive.
Yeah, the Clonakilty AFC Town amalgamation team versus Ballydehob. Definitely the day we played Clonakilty Town in Dunmanway, the AFC players stood out at the back, very good defenders, solid. The Clonakilty AFC players have added a lot to the Clonakilty Town team. In fairness, I think Clonakilty Town are a lot more solid this season. Mr. Leahy, I think he's put together a good squad. Ballydehob coming to travel to Dara, always a fierce hard place to get a result. It's hard to see 3 draws in the 3 games, and that's me sitting on the fence. but at the same time, if I was a betting person, which I'm not, as I said earlier, I probably would have to, if I wasn't going to go with a draw on this one, I'd have to go with Ballydehob.
Very good. Mr. Lee will be in touch, no doubt, once he hears that on the podcast, John. Before we finish up, if you want to follow the West Cork League throughout the season, it's very straightforward. The westcorkleague.com website is available 24/7. If you just search for West Cork League in Google, the website address will pop up if you haven't already saved it as a bookmark. On Facebook, just search for West Cork League and you'll find them there. And West Cork League at West Cork League on Twitter as well. The podcast comes out once a week, and you can follow the West Cork League results, goal scorers, league tables and upcoming fixtures each week in both the Echo and Southern Star. Thank you very much, Mr. Buckley, for your time this evening. It's been...
Can I just add one
Oh, yeah.
If you don't mind. The Women's League, we are starting again the following week. We were hoping to start it next Sunday, but we've pushed it back a week just to hopefully maybe add an extra team. We should have 7, if not 8 teams entering the Women's League this year after a very successful season last season. The format of it is a women's sevens, and it's played on Astro and Bantry and Dunmanway. All the women's teams last year seemed to enjoy it. The format, everything worked out very good. So hopefully we'll have that up and running by the week after. Mike Helen is putting in some great work in promoting the whole league. Eamon Connolly is putting together this women's league, and like what we said earlier in the championship, there's some great work being done in the background by everybody in the West Cork League. I'd like to thank yourself, Ger Mac, and in promoting the West Cork League, Derry Farr, from also the Echo, Ger McCarthy in the Southern Star, and as I said earlier, Mike Helen. Thanks very much, everyone, for their help.
Well, we appreciate that, and you'll be even happier to hear that I've written about this new Women's Sevens League and what's happening in this week's Southern Star, so you can catch an article on that very subject as well. Before we finish, remember, if you go to youtube.com and search for West Cork League, you'll find this podcast. Please hit the subscribe button, and then every new episode you'll be notified automatically. We're delighted with the feedback. The numbers are rising each week as well, which is fantastic. There's obviously a market out there, and as long as you enjoy it, we'll keep producing it. Big thanks again to John Buckley for being our special guest this week, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the West Cork League podcast. Bye for now.